Hey, it's the music. Stupid. Let's concentrate on the music. Number 21, I think. I'm going to save, there's one record I'm going to save to the end that I literally cleaned last night and blasted, and I had like a kumbaya-esque orgasmic experience, and it's one of my all-time favorite records. And it's a record that needed some TLC, but it's an original pressing that I have, and we'll get to that at the end of this. That'll be the final selection that I showcase. But I'm going to go way back to the 1940s, late 30s into the 40s, and I want to showcase the work of Charlie Christian. Now, if you don't know Charlie Christian, this is your opportunity to learn about Charlie Christian. In a way, he's single-handedly the person that really got the electric guitar into the minds of bands and orchestras and the world in a way. He became a member of the Benny Goodman sextet with Lionel Hampton and several other musicians. And he's kind of one of the originators of bebop, too. Now, of course, it comes from the big band sound. He gets turned on to Benny Goodman by John Hammond, who was the A&R at Columbia Records. And what an amazing guitar player. I think he played the Gibson ES something, that kind of or the hollow body electric guitar and an amp. And orchestras didn't have electric guitars at the time, and they were mostly, when they do had guitars, there's more rhythm in the back, in the rhythm section there. And he sometimes came out into the forefront and really popularized the electric guitar. And a lot of great guitarists attribute an influence that Charlie Christian was an influence. Again, around the same time of Django Reinhardt, separate continents, separate around the world, separate styles completely. I'm a huge fan of Django Reinhardt. Sometimes I feel Charlie Christian, his music gets pushed back in lost with the orchestra setting and stuff, but occasionally he comes out. This is a famous comp that's been around. I think this version came out in 1970s. It's a double Columbia record, the solo flight of the genius of Charlie Christian. And it has selections with the Benny Goodman Sextet, the Benny Goodman Orchestra. I mean, pretty much almost everything, with few exceptions, with Benny Goodman in the mix. And it's really worth exploring. And if you're a guitar player and you don't know about Charlie Christian, you really need to. He was also the forerunner of rock and roll guitar in the 50s, and so many bluesy slash rockabilly guitar players were very influenced by Charlie Christian. So Columbia Records, this is my 70s pressing from many years ago. The Youngbloods. This is their third album. This is 1968, The Youngbloods, Elephant Mountain. Now, the Youngbloods don't seem to get a lot of love here. And every time someone mentions the Youngbloods, all you can think of is Get Together, the Chet Powers / Dino Valenti song that became an anthem for a generation. Come on, people now, smile on your brother. Now, they didn't write it. Everybody got together. Love one another right now. So they started recording this in New York, and Jerry Corbett, is it Jerry Corbett? I hope I didn't get that wrong, leaves the band. He's on, I think, 1 or 2 tracks on here. I'm going to get that wrong, and I'm going to have to insert here if I got that name wrong. But he leaves the band. The band starts recording in New York, I think as early as 1967, 68. Then they moved to San Francisco. They moved to Marin County, and they become hippies in Marin County, and Northern California, across the Golden Gate Bridge, and it becomes a trio. Jesse Colin Young becomes the primary writer, wrote most of the songs, I think 5 or 6 of the songs on here, and then they recorded the rest of the album in RCA Studios in Los Angeles. Something I did not realize, that this album was produced by one Charles E. Daniels, Charlie Daniels, which I didn't know he was really doing production, and of course he wouldn't put out his own album until 1970, I believe, his first solo album, Charlie Daniels. This sounds nothing like Charlie Daniels. Of course, a producer is not going to push music in their sound anyway, but I didn't know that until I just did a little. I was looking at the production. I said, "Is that the same Charlie Daniels?" Well, yeah. You know, the violin, the country rock, the southern rock. This is nothing like that. This is sort of folk music pushed into blues and some jazzy things. They're adding more electric piano in this record, some orchestration. They have a real, it's getting to kind of get into that little country folk rock sound a little more. And I absolutely love this album. There's two standout tracks. The whole album is good, but the standout tracks that to me just lift this record above most records. Again, this came out in 1969. The opening track, Darkness, Darkness. And I believe on one of the solo albums that Robert Plant did in the last decade or so, he does a cover, a wonderful cover, a really slow, dirge-like cover of Darkness, Darkness. The other song on here is, that I was thinking about, is Quicksand. And it's just got a heroic orchestration build-up in the chorus, but it's really beautiful. Of course, it ends with Ride the Wind. That's a 6.5-minute song that has some sort of jazzy piano. Now, the Youngbloods would leave RCA, I think after this, sign up a deal with Warner Brothers and start their own custom label called Raccoon Records and put out a lot of records. And it's interesting about RCA when I think about it, because they gave the Youngbloods, who weren't like a huge selling artist, massive. They weren't having a lot of big hits yet, but Warner Brothers gave them a great custom label and signing other bands too, and they released a lot of content, some live things, and I have pretty much everything I've done. I was thinking of RCA actually, I apologize, with the Jefferson Airplane custom label Bark, which I've talked about several times out here, but there are a lot of content coming out from the Youngbloods and subsequent solo projects. Banana and the Bunch, Banana is on here, and Joe Bowers. So the trio of them left is on this third album, but there's some really good tracks. There's a song called On Sir Francis Drake, and it sort of takes the name from Sir Francis Drake Boulevard, this huge roadway boulevard that cuts through San Rafael, California, north of Marin. And I think they lived out eventually by Olima and on the sort of that we call West Marin in Marin County, and beautiful area. They did, in fact, on a subsequent album, they did Hippie from Olima, sort of a response to Okie from Muskogee, and it just was a great feel. I love Jesse Collins Young, his voice. Of course, he had a pretty successful solo career on Warner Brothers after this, but I saw them the last time around 1970 or 71 at Friends and Relations, a family dog out on the Great Highway in San Francisco as a trio. And it was kind of that jazzy, Ride the Wind. I think that's one of the live cuts from, I think it's the show I was at that was on Raccoon Records. So the third album, by the Youngbloods, 1969, I believe. Yes, because this one's from 1968. This is the second album by Taj Mahal. Of course, Taj Mahal, I love Taj Mahal. He's got this rootsy, southern, soulful, bluesy crossover sound, a little bit of rock and roll, and it was a favorite of mine. For a long time, I was picking up everything I heard of Taj Mahal. He started with one of his early bands. His early bands was with Ry Cooder, the Rising Suns, and they made an album produced by Terry Melcher that never came out. Eventually, years later, it was released on CD and then LP on Sundays as an unreleased thing. It's an interesting album. It's got some things, some songs, some rootsy crossover blues rock songs that he would do on his own. But this is my first entry into his catalog, and I went back, got his first album and then subsequent albums. The Giant Steps Old Folks at Home double album is one of my favorites, with some really bluesy, jammy things with the great addition who's on here, Jesse Ed Davis on guitar, who I think he did horn arrangements too, and piano and brass arrangements. Fabulous guitar player, Jesse Ed Davis. Also, Gary Gilmore on bass and Chuck Blackwell on drums. Al Cooper fills in on a couple tracks as well. Produced by David Rubinson. Again, I believe this was produced in San Francisco because Rubinson was based out here, who was a Columbia staff producer working with Moby Grape and this 1968 Taj Mahal album. But the song that got me into this album that I heard on FM radio back in 68 was his amazing version, which he co-wrote, I believe. She Caught the Katy, Left Me a Mule to Ride. What a fantastic song. What a great soulful arrangement. So there is a bit of a soul fusion to the bluesy country folk music in here. It's not a straight folk record by any stretch of the imagination. It's a perfect record from 1968. The second album from Taj Mahal, The Natural Blues. What a great cover. What a great album, Taj Mahal. Okay, this album is an album I got a promo of, and I think everyone, at least if they don't know about her, you've been living under a rock, is this is pretty much the main original solo album, sort of the official album, major label solo album by Emmylou Harris. And I, unbeknownst, got turned on to her from the first two Graham Parsons records. And I got those records, and for whatever reason, if you look at the back of Grievous Angel, it says in the top on the back with Emmylou Harris. And I hate to admit, but back when I first got those Graham Parsons album, I loved the harmony of this Washington, D.C. girl that sounds like she's the perfect country girl. That Graham Parsons, I think, discovered her in a club singing. What a gorgeous angelic voice. And I didn't really follow her and realize her name, but when I worked at this record factory store, that was the name of the store, my buddy and boss, Vernon, who was all into roots and country, the Warner Brother guy comes to the store and gives Vernon a copy of this record. And I'm sitting there because we're always lusting, hey, can I get a promo of this or that? You know, they're giving out promo copies. And Vernon asked the Warner Brother guy if he can have another copy for Maslov. And of course, this is that copy from 1975, I believe this album came out. There you go, promo copy. Beautiful shape still. A little bit of ring wear. I don't always usually get a lot of ring wear. And this sounds pristine on Reprise Records. Now, I fell in love with this, and then I realized it was the woman singing with Graham Parsons. And I don't know how long after this, not long, she played her sort of first tour backing up the album. And she was at the Boarding House, a wonderful small club that we go to constantly in San Francisco. And not only did she cover some amazing songs like Billy Sherrill songs and songs by Merle Haggard, Bottle of Wine, Sleepless Nights, cover that. Coat of Many Colors, the wonderful song by Dolly Parton. Beatles, For No One, does a beautiful, folky, intimate version. And Queen of the Silver Dollar, the Shel Silverstein song. She opens up with Bluebird Wine, a song written by Rodney Crowell, who was on stage with her on tour. But the kicker was, the first time I ever saw live, was the guitar player, the lead guitar player, that twang lead guitar player who goes back, who played with Elvis Presley, he played with Ricky Nelson, and he played on the Graham Parsons records, and that is the wonderful guitar playing of James Burton. James Burton and that pink Paisley guitar, pink Paisley Telecaster. And for the first couple years, he would tour with Emmylou Harris, and every time they'd come through, I'd see them. But this debut on Reprise Records, Warner Reprise, is such a beautiful record. It's country rock. It's more on the folk country side of things with some great rhythm to it. Again, of course, the rhythm section, and Herb Pedersen on 12-string, Glendy Harding on electric piano, Bill Payne from Little Feat on here, Ricky Skaggs. I mean, this is a pure record, and it's a really beautiful record. Pieces of the Sky by the wonderful, gorgeous vocal of Emmylou Harris, just a favorite of mine. And lastly, that record I mentioned that went through the Humming Guru, 1968. And I'm going to tell you a story here as we close on the final record on It's the Music Stupid. New Year's Eve day, 1968. I'm 14 years old, 14 and a half years old about. Go with my buddies to the record store in San Francisco. And I don't remember, this had like a bag over it. It wasn't sealed this way, but the record store had it covered up. And that was this version of Jimi Hendrix, Electric Ladyland. Of course, this had come out, I think, about 2 months before. And on the radio, FM radio everywhere, I heard All Along the Watchtower. That's my main thing. But I had the first two reprise albums of Jimi Hendrix. This is the original Track Records release, or one of the two originals. They changed out the cover photograph thing, so this might be this. I don't think this is the exact first pressing, but it's very early in the Matrix and all that good stuff. Anyway, very early Track Records, Pete Townshend's label, and Lambert, the management, put this out. And this is my very favorite Jimi Hendrix record. But I remember kind of walking in the house in a brown paper bag, bringing it home because of this cover. History knows now that Jimi Hendrix hated this cover. He preferred the cover photograph that was on the recent 50th anniversary, like a few years ago, that Linda McCartney took with the children on the cover. I didn't really like that issue package, but that's not what this is about. This went through the Humming Guru last night. Now, I kept it in good shape, but it definitely has, for 1968, probably my most played Jimi Hendrix record. And I played this a lot on every record player I've had over the years. And I think it's a stunning record. And this is one of those few records in my collection that every single time I hear it, I hear something different. I hear another note, another cough, another Jimi Hendrix kind of loosely saying something. And it has that live studio sound. You hear the amplifiers buzzing. You hear so much on this the more you play it. Now, even though this is a video about the music, running it through my Humming Guru did take a half a century of crap off the record. And I blast this mother. I mixed a perfect martini, and I sat back and just played it straight through. Didn't say a word, just turned it over, all four sides. And it was a spiritual experience. I sat and devoured the cover. Well, that sounds weird, doesn't it? The cover. But from the opening soundtrack and The Gods Made Love, this is one of the best uses of stereo imaging, stereo panning of maybe any record in my collection, from my opinion. Voodoo Child, Rainy Day, Dream Away, 1983, A Mermaid. A Merman, a merman I should, how can I not get that right? A merman I should turn to be. That makes no sense. But how it's just jammy and almost jazzy, and the organ player, the organ on it. I know there's some vibes on it by Buzzy Linhart. This is an amazing album. Voodoo Child, Slight Return, Still Raining, and of course, All Along the Watchtower. No argument there. That's the best cover of a Bob Dylan song ever. It's the definitive version. I didn't even realize, I think, the year before, I'd gotten John Wesley Harding that has that song, and it's just a song kind of, I had it, I knew it, but I really didn't pay attention. And when I realized that was a Dylan song, oh my God. But last night, listening to this album, there's so much on here. Like, you started thinking what could have been, should have been, that Jimi Hendrix was talking and possibly doing a thing with Miles Davis. And Miles had heard this album before he did Bitches Brew. Not that it's anything really like it, but there's a certain thing to it. Of course, it breaks into some beautiful melody, and his voice, to me, has never sounded better than on Electric Ladyland. So, 1968. I remember, and lastly, as I close, my buddies who I bought the record with that day, New Year's Eve day, we spent the night at my house. We had a sleepover at my house, 14-year-old kids from 1968 and 1969. We were listening to KSAN radio, and I have this very vivid memory. The San Francisco FM underground station. At midnight, Tom Donahue was on the air, the father of underground radio. And he started playing All Along Watchtower here, and he did it like a montage. And in the last minute of the minute to midnight, while he was playing All Along the Watchtower, he had the time woman. In those days, you would dial popcorn. If you dialed popcorn on your phone, the time is 11:59 and 5 seconds. It doesn't sound like that. It sounds like a woman. That's the sound. And every 10 seconds or so, you'd hear, the time is 11:59 and 30 seconds, and on and on and on. The time is 12 midnight or something like that. That was montaged in the radio station over this version of All Along the Watchtower. And I can remember that. So every time I listen to this song now, I kind of, in the back, the sense memory thing of hearing that popcorn time woman. You of a certain age will remember that, the time woman. So anyway, that is, It's the Music Stupid, number 21. Great records. See you next time. Mazzy loves you.